It's just setting up really quick and then.
Oh man. All right, Joe, you think we're good here?
Yep. Just 1 second. Okay. All right.
All righty. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Row Seat. Thanks for joining us today for our first live interview. I'm Dylan Dems, and that's my co-host, Joey Schwartz. We're so glad everyone can hang out with us, and we hope everyone is safe and healthy during this time.
We are so fortunate to have two-time NBA champion, NCAA champion, NBA Finals MVP, and NBA Hall of Famer Isiah Thomas here tonight to talk about his amazing career and all about leading one of the greatest NBA franchises of all time, the Detroit Pistons. Thank you. So great to see you, Isiah. Again, thank you for being our first guest. We really appreciate it. We've been watching you on all of the talk shows, so we know that you're a pro, but this is our first one, so try and take it easy on us.
No, you guys are great. You can do no wrong in my eyes.
Thank you.
So how are you? How's quarantine? How's life been treating you?
You know, actually, it's been good. As you know, my daughter Lauren tested positive during this period of time. Actually, she's on the other side of it now.
Mm-hmm.
Joshua, my son, he is on Instagram as Zeke Thomas,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and he DJs live every day at 4 o'clock. So while all of us have been, in quarantine, everybody from the family comes in. He plays music, and it's kind of been great, family therapy for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
From 4 to 6. He plays music. We chat, we talk, and it's been truly a healing type of situation for all of us. And I got to admire him and also my daughter, because they both have taken this situation, and neither one of them have complained about it. They just hit it head on and kept moving. So I thank both of them for.
It's great. Well, we're so glad that you're staying healthy. So let's get straight to it. So when you were growing up in Chicago, what were those years like? Tell us about your childhood sports career.
I had an interesting sports career because it was surrounded by a lot of turbulence, and just my first 10 years of life, there was, Kennedy was assassinated, Malcolm X was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated, Fred Hampton in our community was assassinated. In Chicago, there were a lot of, unrest in Chicago during that period of time. My neighborhood was literally burnt to the ground. We were moving from place to place, and, sports definitely was an outlet. But sports for me was a place where you went to get food. It's like at the community center or at the church, they had food, and you also played on the team at the gym. So sports, football, basketball, baseball, those things were all involved in my childhood growing up. But they were all places to go and eat, and then have recreation around it.
Do you think that if you would have chosen a different sport instead of basketball, you could have went pro like you did for basketball?
I never thought, growing up, I never thought about making the NBA. And you have to remember that the famous game that they talk about with Magic Johnson scored 42 points against the Philadelphia 76ers, and he played center. Well, that game was tape delayed. So the NBA wasn't on television like it is today. Mm-hmm. So the dream of growing up to be an NBA player is not as prevalent as it is today in terms of kids dreaming that. I was fortunate enough to be a good basketball player, got a scholarship, and all my goals were geared towards law school and trying to get a law degree, practice law, and hopefully make some money that way. Mm-hmm. As I became a good basketball player, they talked about going into the NBA and everything. But when I went into the NBA, I strictly went into the NBA to make money. I didn't go into the NBA thinking that I was going to be a Hall of Fame player, you know, win NBA championships and everything else. I went into the NBA because somebody said they're going to give you some money to play basketball. And I was like, for real? So that's why I went into the NBA.
That's great.
So after high school, obviously you made the big decision. You went to Indiana and played for Coach Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
What was being like a player for Bobby Knight? What was that like, and why did you choose Indiana?
Well, you know, it's like I said, it's not like it was then. It's not like it is now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my mom was very heavy-handed, and you know, my mom, you know, our kids now, they have the two caps, and they'll say, well,
yeah,
I chose to go to such and such school, and they put the cap on. Well, my mom called a press conference, and she said, my son has made his decision. He's decided to go to Indiana University. And that was it. I mean, so at that time, you know, my mom made the decision for me to go to Indiana. It was definitely the best one. And her and Coach Knight really got along. I wanted to stay home and go to DePaul in Chicago. And she thought it was best that I get away and that I leave home. And that definitely was the right decision for me.
Yeah, that's where
at the time, but it definitely was the right decision.
That's where your close friend Mark Aguirre went, right? DePaul?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after winning the 1981 NCAA championship, you got drafted number 2 overall by the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Were you excited at the time about getting drafted, or did you have any doubts about getting drafted to Detroit?
I had a lot of doubt, and I wasn't, you know, I wanted to go back home. I wanted to go back to Chicago like every kid does. You know, you want to go back to your hometown. And I didn't know a lot of people in Detroit. I had family and relatives in Flint, but I'd never really been to Detroit. You know, you take 94 to Flint, Kalamazoo, and back to Chicago, but I never really spent time in Detroit. And I was a little nervous about coming to Detroit. You know, I was 19 years old, and, you know, I didn't know anybody there. And I remember Will Robinson telling me that, you know, this is a place that you're going to love, and people are going to love you. And when I got to Detroit, I can tell you that as soon as I got there, the friends that I made, the people that I met, everyone treated me like I was you know, a brother or a cousin or a nephew. I felt like I was family to everyone, which, you know, to this day, it's still that way. You know, with your dad, or, you know, your grandma or anything. I mean, it's like, you know, it just, for whatever reason, I became the adopted son, and I'm lucky and I'm happy that it happened that way for me.
Let me tell you, we're lucky that you got drafted to Detroit, because let me tell you, 2 championships.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously you won 2 championships back to back, 1989, 1990. But what was it about the Bad Boys' specific play style that was so effective during those periods of time?
You know, early on, we were probably one of the top 3 offensive teams in the NBA in the 80s. And I think we still hold the highest scoring game, the record for the highest scoring game in the NBA against the Denver Nuggets. But we found out that that wasn't a way that you can win championships. So we became, I would just say, a juggernaut as a defensive team. Defensively, we became the best team in the NBA. Defensively, we prided ourselves on stopping people from scoring. You know, my high school team, just to give you some background on where I was defensively, my high school team that I won a championship with was the best defensive defensive team in high school. When I got into college, my college team at Indiana, once we got to the tournament, we won every game by double digits or more, by 12 to 13 points or more. One of the best defensive teams to play in the NC2A tournament still today. And now my NBA team, the Detroit Pistons, is still looked at as one of the best defensive teams to ever play in the NBA. So defense wins championships, offense is pretty, but at the end of the day, we had to change our style, become a tough-minded defensive team. And that meant we had to develop defensive schemes, become more disciplined, concentrate a little longer, play with a lot more intensity, and focus more on stopping people from scoring as opposed to you scoring yourself.
Yeah, definitely agree that defense wins championships, 100%. Yeah. So when things got physical on the court, who did you always know always had your back on the Bad Boys?
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. You know, during that period of time in the 80s and in the early 90s, you had to have physicality. You know, when I look at Philadelphia, so Philadelphia had Moses Malone, Mark Aguirre, Dr. J. The Celtics had Parrish, Bird, McHale. The Lakers, you know, with Worthy, Rambis, you know, Kareem. The Bulls at that time had Charles Oakley, Horace Grant, Bill Cartwright. You know, we were sitting there with Mahorn, Lambier, you know, and James Edwards. So the back line really had to be big and physical. And as a small guy, whenever you drove to the basket, you know, you got hit, you got knocked down. You know, the Milwaukee Bucks were a very physical team. And that was just the way the game was played in the 80s. So you always had to have a strong back line of defense. And when you got into the paint, the big guys didn't like you coming into the paint. And when you came into the paint, there was a price to pay for it, as you saw me with all the stitches on my head, because I was stubborn and I kept going into the paint. I would get knocked down, but I would get right back up and just say, you know what? I'm gonna go to the line and make my 2 free throws, and I'm coming back again.
It's amazing, yeah. All right, so everyone wants to know, how were you able to beat Michael Jordan 2 years in a row? No one else did that. Just it's impossible. Seemed impossible. How did you shut him down?
Actually, it was 3 years in a row.
3 years. You're right. You're right.
We actually played them 4 times in the playoffs. Beat them 3, they beat us 1. And, you know, the way that we were able to really shut him down, not necessarily shut him down, but the way we were able to win the game. So it's a difference between, you know, shutting somebody down and winning the game. So we never were able to shut him down. He always was able to score his points, but in the process of scoring his points, what we would do is shut the other members of the team down. Consequently, he couldn't score enough points to beat us, and we would make him play 1 against 5 all the time. At that time, he was a very reluctant passer. He wasn't good at sharing the ball with his teammates. He became better at sharing the ball with his teammates later on. But for the most part, you know, he would score, you know, 30 points or 25 points, and we would be able to shut the rest of the team down, and we could score on them. And, you know, it was a simple philosophy. I mean, that's how we beat them.
Are those what people call the Jordan rules?
So the Jordan rules were pretty simple. You know, Jordan wasn't great going left, and he was great in the air. So when we would always force him to his left hand, and then we would come and trap. And when we came to trap, as I said before, he was a reluctant passer. And consequently, he would take a lot of off-balance shots, a lot of tough shots. When you would see, and you'll see the tape, there are 2 or 3 people around him, he still would take a shot as opposed to passing the ball to his teammates who were open. And later on, he started passing the ball to his teammates. And consequently, we couldn't send 2 to 3 people to double team him, because Paxson and Kerr were just standing out there going boom, boom, boom. B.J. Armstrong, Craig Hodges, they were knocking down shots. You know, so we would trap them, always going left, send them left. And that was I think discipline-wise, that what was so disciplined about us is that 1 through 12, everybody came in and they was focused on the game plan in terms of forcing him to the left. And when we forced him left, we would always send another man to trap him. And when we trapped him, either he would take a bad shot or he wouldn't make a very good pass, and we were able to get back and rotate. When he got to the front of the rim, like everyone else, as opposed to letting him score an easy 2 points, you would send him to the foul line to make him shoot free throws. But that was the strategy, for myself too. And as I said, I got the scars around my head. Whenever I went to the basket, you'll see them. They don't show it on the video, but you'll see people like knocking me down and hit me upside the head. That's just the way the game was played for anybody coming into the paint at that time. And so all rules were on the perimeter in terms of double teaming. But I think everyone in the NBA at that time had a rule that, you wasn't going to give easy layups or easy dunks at the basket. You were going to make somebody go to the line and earn them from the foul line, make 2 free throws from the foul line, as opposed to getting a for sure 2 at the basket.
It worked.
Yeah.
It really worked. Do you think that the Jordan rules would ever have to be put in effect like today to shut down a certain player in the NBA?
It'll be difficult today because the rules are so different today. Right now, you have 5 people on the perimeter, and when I was playing, the easiest way or the most efficient way that people thought was to get 3 points was to get to the basket, make a layup, and get fouled, and then you can go and get an extra point from the foul line. Mm-hmm. Now everyone really just stands outside and shoots a 3, and no one goes into the lane to absorb any contact. So, those rules will be difficult to implement now because no one is really going to the basket. And when they do go to the basket, defensively, everybody is out on the perimeter. When we were driving to the basket, so you would have an offensive player plus his defender. So every time you went to the basket, there literally was 6 people in the lane, and you would be the 7th person coming in, trying to move around all those bodies to get a shot. Nowadays, you go to the lane, you see guards going to the lane now, and literally there's no one in the paint. I mean, they just go like this and nobody's there. Back then, you had, 4, 5, 6 people to try to maneuver around.
Yeah. So for all of us young players, besides having talent, what else does it take to become an NBA star?
Oh, you gotta be smart. Everyone, when you look at the NBA, everyone has an equal amount of speed, equal amount of physical ability. But what really separates, the good from the great is A, how long you can concentrate, B, how long can you sustain intensity, and can you be smart playing? And my advantage, and I would say to all small people who are thinking about playing, the big guys always have an advantage. Like Jordan is 6'6", 6'7", Magic is 6'9", Bird is 6'9", and they always compare me to those guys. But I mean, they're like up here, and I'm like down here. So as above is below, and what you have to do as a small guy is you have to depend on that bigger player, that bigger, stronger, faster player to make a mistake. That's the only way you can take advantage of the taller, bigger player. Now, if that taller, bigger player keeps making a mistake and you keep capitalizing on that mistake, that's how you beat them. But if you're making mistakes and that bigger, faster, stronger guy is making mistakes too, then that bigger, faster, stronger guy is going to beat you. Right. So the less mistakes you make and the more mistakes he make, that's how you win basketball games. And that, it really is that simple. The bigger guy will make a turnover, and if you come down and make a shot, okay, you're up 2. Bigger guy will come down and make another turnover. You come down and make a shot, you may make a 3. Now you're up 5. Yeah. And the more times you get to shoot, and the more he gets fancy and does all this other crazy stuff, and you keep scoring, then you're going to beat that guy.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because me and Joey, we're not too tall ourselves. So that's good to know.
Well, I was taught, when I came up and I'm learning how to play basketball, my coaches emphasized to me, basketball is a thinking man's game. And if you can outthink your opponent, mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. I'm gonna say that again.
Mhm.
Mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. And if you keep outsmarting your opponent, you're going to beat him regardless of size, height, and weight.
Yeah.
So, really quick, we want to do a couple quick fire questions with you. So the first one we have is, who do you have winning in a 7-game series? The Bad Boys or the '04 Pistons?
Whew, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
It really is, because the '04 Pistons are very good. We were very good. And what I like to say is we are Piston family.
Mhm.
So we don't compete and we don't fight. So we fight the other team. So the 88, 89, 90 Pistons, '04, '05 Pistons put us against the Lakers. I think it's a sweep against the Lakers, and it's a sweep against the Lakers. I mean, I think we're the only franchise in it may be in the history of the NBA. You guys should check that. But we're the only franchise that's swept the Lakers both times in the NBA Finals.
Right.
We'll check that. Yeah.
I watched both
Or,
those.
or did the '04 Pistons? They may have lost one game.
To go
They
in
lose one?
I think it went to Game 5.
Yeah, went to a game 5. Okay.
I think he did. Because I watched that series the other day.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
days ago.
Well, okay. Well, we beat them twice. The Celtics beat them twice, and the Pistons beat them twice. How's that?
Yeah.
It's great.
If the season continues, who do you think will win the NBA championship?
Right now, I think LeBron and the Lakers were on such a good roll, and at the end, as the season was starting to end, I thought their rhythm was good. I thought they were playing exceptional basketball. In the East, Milwaukee was up 2 games in the loss column. I thought the Lakers were on their tail to catch them, and then Giannis was hurt also.
Mhm.
So I felt like the Lakers had momentum. You always worry about, the Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George and Doc Rivers coaching them. But at the same time, I just felt like the Lakers they had momentum building. And I don't know if they can get that back. Chemistry and momentum, those are 2 elusive things.
Mhm.
And when you lose them, it's hard to get them back. And when you get them, you got to ride them out. And I thought the Lakers were playing good basketball. I don't know if they can sustain it, but if they do come back, I still say you're looking at the Lakers and the Clippers, and probably one of them facing Milwaukee.
Yeah, I agree.
Who do you think would win MVP?
Well, if the Lakers catch Milwaukee, it was a 2-man race. It was Giannis against LeBron.
Mhm.
And we were giving Giannis the edge only because they had the better record. But it looked like LeBron was closing in.
Yeah.
Now, if the Lakers end up and they have the best record in the game, and then they got the best player, you have to give it to LeBron.
Yeah.
So depending on who's got the better record, that's who I was going to vote with, either LeBron or Giannis, depending on who had the best record.
That's what I was going to say too, LeBron or Giannis. Who's your favorite player to watch right now?
They're both injured. Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving. I mean, those are my, because I like the little guys, right?
Yeah.
So watching Steph shoot and watching Kyrie, dance,
Mhm.
those are my 2 favorite players to watch, because I appreciate what the little guys and the guards are doing. KD and LeBron are, they're off the charts. Those would be my top 4.
What about all time?
All time, my favorite to watch? Oof. That's a tough one, because you got Magic, you got Bird, you got Jordan, you got Kareem, you got Dr. J. I mean, You
There's
know,
a lot.
all of them were great.
Definitely a
So
tough choice.
I couldn't give you one all time, but those five are pretty special that I just named.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, Isaiah. So some fans have sent us some questions for us to ask you. So
Okay.
the first one is from Brian T in West Bloomfield. And he asked, what are the differences between playing for Bobby Knight and Chuck Daly?
It's like hot and cold water. Coach Knight was very intense, very fiery. And, you know, he demanded that you play at a certain intensity level, which I'm glad I learned how to be that intense and bring it to the game every single night. And not only bring it to the game, but be able to sustain it at a very high level.
Yeah.
You know, Chuck was a different kind of coach. He would let you have the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of an NBA season, which I think he understood better because he was an NBA coach. They were both great tacticians in terms of diagramming plays and telling you how to execute. But temperament and personality, they really were polar opposites. I mean, if you can put this image in your head, Coach Knight was the red sweater guy. Chuck Daly was the suit and tie guy.
Right.
That's how different they were.
The next question is from Brody H from Birmingham, and he said, in Game 6 of the 1988 Finals, you sprained your ankle, but you still had 25 points in the third quarter. How is that even possible?
You know what? I wish I knew. I mean, sometimes the basketball gods and, you know, just the universe just kind of picks you up and say, here's a gift. I look back on that performance today, and I really still don't know how I was able to do that or accomplish it. I'm glad I was able to do it. You know, it was a great feeling while it was happening. But if I would be lying if I sit here and I told you that, oh, I did this and this, you know, I worked this way, and I had no idea. It was completely like an out of body of experience. And I've had those before in the game, so I can't quite describe it. But it was definitely a beautiful feeling.
Well, going into the fourth quarter, were you like shocked that that had just happened and you were like, oh my God, I just did that?
How about this? I didn't even know what I had done. I was just trying to win the game, and
Right.
and you know what I mean. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I just scored 25 points, because I wasn't counting. You know, I was just trying to, like, you know, try not to, you know, make any mistakes, try not to cost my team, and trying to win the game. Truly had no idea, you know, what had just taken place or the record I had just set.
That's crazy.
Wow. So the next question is from Harrison D in Franklin. And he asked, who was the biggest trash talker you have ever played against?
In the NBA, college, or in the neighborhood? Because there's a lot of guys that talk trash in the neighborhood. So I'm just going to assume that he's talking about the NBA. And I would say, you know, out of all the players that I played against in the NBA, Bird was the best. And not only was he's the best, but his trash talk was the most effective because he could back it up.
Yeah.
So the last question we have is actually from someone named Isiah from Birmingham. And he said, you and Mark Aguirre were drafted #1 and #2. How was the relationship at that time, and how did it continue throughout the NBA?
I've known Mark my entire life. We both grew up on the west side of Chicago, literally 4 blocks from each other. And, you know, it's an amazing story in terms of how he and I were the #1 and #2 pick in the draft, growing up in the same neighborhood. I don't know if that's ever happened since. And our relationship is still strong today, strong in grade school, high school, college. He's been a lifelong friend, and, you know, it's still tight.
Was there ever a point before the draft where you guys were like, wow, we really could go number 1 and number 2?
Well, it's funny because, we were both trying to go back home to Chicago. Neither one of us, he didn't want to go to Dallas or Detroit or New Jersey. We had never been to Dallas, Detroit, or New Jersey. And Chicago had the 4th pick. So both of us was trying to get to be 4. Chicago had 4 and 6. We actually wanted to be the 4th and the 6th pick in the draft, not the number 1 and 2 pick in the draft, which is crazy when you think about it.
Was it ever a competition between you two to see who would go number 1?
I always thought that Mark Aguirre was the better player. When people ask me, what he did in high school and what he was in college, to me, he was the number 1 player. And if I was running a team at that time, I would have drafted Mark Aguirre as number 1. He had just, even though I won a championship the year before, he was in the Final 4.
Mm-hmm.
What he had done with DePaul in terms of taking DePaul from the bottom all the way to the top as a small college at that time, no other player had ever done what Mark Aguirre was doing at that time and had done in college. I definitely would have taken him number 1.
Well, Isiah, thank you so much for this unbelievable interview. You don't understand how much this means to us, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to meet with us. This was so amazing and inspiring.
You're welcome, and good luck to you guys, and I hope you have a great many more shows and a lot of more guests that are a little better than me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isiah. Thank you.
All right, take care.
You too.
All right.
So also, if anyone would like to make a donation to the Detroit Children's Fund, the link is on our website. All donations are greatly appreciated. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.